In a stunning yet not so stunning move, Christy Wallace has elected not to come back to the Indiana Fever in 2020. So, is aerial powers really the answer for the Indiana Fever? With Christy Wallace stepping away, fans are buzzing about who should fill the spot. But is powers the right move, or just another questionable roster decision? Some say she's exactly what the team needs, while others think Indiana should look elsewhere. Let's break it all down. I look forward to cheering the team from afar. When Christy Wallace announced she was stepping away from the Indiana Fever for the 2025 season, it sent waves through the fan base. Some people saw it coming, others were completely caught off guard. But one thing was certain: the Fever now had a gap to fill, and with that, a new conversation started brewing. Should aerial powers be the one to take her place? It didn't take long for fans to start making their case. Powers' name popped up all over social media, with supporters calling for the Fever to sign her, and honestly, it makes sense why people are pushing for it. She's got experience, she's proven herself as a scorer, and she's coming off a strong run overseas. The idea of her stepping onto the court alongside Caitlin Clark, on paper it sounds exciting, but here's the thing: not everyone is convinced this is the right move. There's a whole other side to this debate. One that raises real concerns about whether Powers is what Indiana actually needs right now. Before we even talk about fit, let's rewind a bit and look at how the Fever have been building their team over the last couple of years. Indiana has been in full-on rebuild mode. After years of struggling at the bottom of the league, they finally got a break with Aaliyah Boston as their #1 pick in 2023. That was a game-changer. Boston came in and immediately made an impact, proving she was the franchise cornerstone the Fever had been missing. But getting one star player wasn't enough. The Fever needed a real supporting cast, a group that could turn them from a struggling team into a legit contender, and that's where Caitlin Clark comes in. Clark's arrival has completely shifted the narrative for Indiana. She's one of the most talked about players in years, bringing instant attention and energy to the franchise. Suddenly, the Fever went from being an afterthought to one of the most watched teams in the WNBA. So now the question isn't just about filling Wallace's spot, it's about building the right kind of roster around Clark and Boston, one that can actually compete at the highest level. That's where the debate over aerial powers gets interesting. Powers is the type of player who can bring instant offense. She's a pure scorer, someone who can get her own shot, attack the basket, and hit from deep when she's feeling it. That's valuable, no doubt. If you watched her during her time with the Washington Mystics or the Minnesota Lynx, she can put up numbers. But here's the catch: Indiana already has a lot of guards and wings, and more importantly, they have a specific playstyle they're trying to develop. With Caitlin Clark running the show, the Fever's offense is going to be built around ball movement and spacing. Clark isn't the kind of player who's going to ISO every possession. She thrives in high-tempo, smart basketball, where teammates move off the ball, make quick decisions, and stretch the floor. Does Powers fit into that system? That's where opinions start to split. Some people argue that Powers' ability to create her own shot makes her a great fit if teams start doubling Clark, which they absolutely will. Having someone like Powers who can take advantage of those openings could be huge. Instead of Clark having to force tough shots, she'd have a reliable scoring option to kick the ball to. But on the flip side, Powers is not known for being a great off-ball player. She's at her best when she has the ball in her hands, when she's able to create for herself. That's great for certain situations, but in a system that's supposed to flow through Clark, it raises questions about whether she would actually fit in seamlessly. Then there's the defensive side of things. If you look at the WNBA landscape, right now the teams that are consistently winning championships aren't just built on offense, they have elite defensive pieces that hold everything together. Take a team like the Las Vegas Aces. They've got Aya Wilson anchoring the paint, Chelsea Gray locking things down on the perimeter, and a team-wide defensive mentality that makes them tough to score on. That's what separates them from teams that are just good offensively. Indiana, for all the excitement around Clark, still has a lot of work to do defensively. Aaliyah Boston is a force inside, but the Fever struggle against teams with dominant bigs. They need size, they need more defensive versatility, and they need players who can guard multiple positions effectively. Powers, she's a decent defender, but she's not necessarily a game changer on that end. And that's why some fans feel Indiana should be looking at a different type of player. Christy Wallace wasn't a superstar, but she brought grit, hustle, and solid defensive instincts. If the Fever are trying to replace what Wallace brought to the team, Powers isn't a like-for-like swap. That leads to another concern: Indiana's cap space. After Wallace stepped away, the Fever opened up around $80,000 in cap space. That might sound like a lot, but in the WNBA, money is tight, every contract matters, and teams have to be strategic about how they spend. Powers has already been on big contracts before. With the links she was making around $155,000 per year, she's probably not looking to take a huge pay cut, especially when she's still proving she can compete at a high level. So, if Indiana were to sign her, they'd have to figure out the financial side of things. And that brings up another question, is Powers the best way to spend that money? The Fever could also look at younger players, defensive-minded wings, or even a true backup center with that cap space. Some fans are already calling for them to find a 66 or 67 big who can help against taller teams, and that's a fair point because if Indiana really wants to compete for a championship, they can't just load up on scorers. They need balance. Now, that's not to say Powers wouldn't bring value. She absolutely would. She's still a proven player with a chip on her shoulder. She's been overlooked before, and when she gets an opportunity, she plays like she's got something to prove, plus her connection with fans is real. Powers is one of those players who actually interacts with people online, responds to comments, and embraces the energy of the fan base. That's a rare thing in sports, and it's part of why so many Fever fans are pushing for her to come to Indiana. She's already seen the tweets, the Instagram posts, the Reddit threads. She knows the fans want her, and she's not ignoring it. She's engaging with the conversation, which makes things even more interesting. So, where does this all leave us right now? It's up to Indiana's front office to decide what kind of move they want to make. If they're looking for instant offense and veteran experience, Powers is a solid choice. She can come and give them scoring depth and provide a veteran presence in the locker room. But if they're thinking about long-term roster construction, defense, and positional needs, then they might need to go in a different direction. And that's what makes this situation so fascinating. There's no clear answer. What we do know is that the Fever are in a crucial moment. They've got Caitlin Clark, they've got Aaliyah Boston, and they have a rare opportunity to build something special. But every move they make from here on out matters because in the WNBA, talent alone isn't enough. It's about building the right team. So now the question is Aerial Powers part of that plan? That's what we're all waiting to find out now that we've broken down the immediate situation with Christy Wallace's departure and the possibility of Aerial Powers joining the Fever. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. This decision isn't just about filling a roster spot, it's about Indiana's long-term strategy and how they plan to build a true championship contender around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. The Fever haven't been a serious title contender for years. They've been rebuilding, shuffling players, and trying to find the right formula, but now with Clark in the mix, everything changes. Looking at past WNBA champions, if we really want to understand what Indiana needs to do, we have to look at the teams that have actually won championships in recent years. The Las Vegas Aces, for example, are the current standard in the WNBA. They didn't just become dominant overnight. It took years of smart roster building, key free agent signings, and developing a team identity that works at the highest level. Aya Wilson is their superstar, but what makes the Aces truly dangerous is the way they build around her. They brought in Chelsea Gray, one of the best floor generals in the league. They added Kelsey Plum, a lights-out shooter who perfectly complements their system. They have size, defensive toughness, and depth in every position. That's what separates good teams from great teams. Now, let's compare that to Indiana. Aaliyah Boston is their Aya Wilson equivalent, a dominant young big who can control the paint. Caitlin Clark is their Kelsey Plum meets Chelsea Gray, a dynamic guard who can score, facilitate, and change the game. But the rest of the roster, that's still a work in progress. The Fever need to decide what type of team they want to be. Are they trying to be a fast-paced, high-scoring team? Do they want to be defensively elite? Do they need more veteran leadership? Or should they focus on young talent that can grow alongside Clark and Boston? This is where the Aerial Powers discussion becomes tricky. Aerial Powers versus other free agents and draft options. Let's say Indiana signs Aerial Powers. She would give them immediate offense, which is valuable. But is she the best option available? There are still other free agents, international players, and draft prospects who might offer a better fit. For example, a bigger wing or a defensive-minded forward might actually be more useful for the Fever than another scorer. There's also the question of how much money the Fever are willing to spend if they sign Powers. That limits their flexibility in making future moves. What if a better player becomes available in a few months? What if a bigger trade opportunity comes up? WNBA teams have to plan ahead. They can't just think about this season. They have to think about next year and beyond. How does Aerial Powers fit in a Caitlin Clark system? One of the most important things to consider is how Powers would actually fit next to Clark on the court. Clark is an elite passer and playmaker. She thrives when she has shooters and high IQ players around her who know how to move without the ball. Powers, on the other hand, has been a high-usage player. She's used to having the ball in her hands, creating her own shot. Would she be willing to adjust her game to fit into a system built around Clark? Would she be okay with playing more off-ball, taking fewer shots, and focusing more on defense and spacing? That's a big question. Some players can adapt to new roles, and some struggle when they're asked to do something different. If the Fever bring in Powers, she has to buy into what the team is trying to do. Otherwise, they risk messing up the chemistry they're trying to build. The Fever's roster needs more than just scoring. One thing that's become very clear is that Indiana still needs more size and depth in the frontcourt. Aaliyah Boston is a dominant force, but she can't do everything alone. Right now, the Fever struggle against taller teams. When they go up against a team like the New York Liberty, who have Brianna Stewart and Jonquel Jones, they don't have enough size to match up. That's why a lot of fans aren't sold on the idea of signing Powers. They don't think another 6-foot guard forward is what the Fever need. Instead, they want a legit backup center, someone who can protect the rim, rebound, and take pressure off Boston. What if the Fever wait and make a bigger move? Another option for Indiana is to wait before making a big signing. Instead of rushing to sign Powers, they could hold onto their cap space, see how the first part of the season goes, and make a move later. If they start the season strong but realize they need a defensive anchor or another veteran leader, they'll have more flexibility to make a trade or pick up a free agent who actually fills that need. Rushing into signing Powers might limit their options down the road. What will the Fever actually do at this point? Nobody knows exactly what Indiana is going to do. The fans have made their voices heard. They want Powers, but the front office has to think about what's best for the team, not just what the fans want. If they truly believe Powers is the missing piece, then we might see her in a Fever jersey soon. But if they're thinking big picture, they might decide to go in a different direction. Either way, one thing is clear. The Indiana Fever are at a turning point. They have the talent, they have the star power. Now it's all about making the right moves to turn this team into a true contender. Final thoughts on the Aerial Powers debate, whether or not the Fever sign Aerial Powers. This whole discussion highlights a bigger issue. Indiana has to be smart with their roster moves. They can't just add players randomly. They need to build a team that makes sense together, one that complements Caitlin Clark's skill set and maximizes Aaliyah Boston's impact. Right now, everything is up in the air, but whatever decision they make will tell us a lot about the direction they're heading in. So, is Aerial Powers the answer, or should the Fever look elsewhere? That's the big question. And we're all waiting to see what happens next. So, what do you think? Should the Indiana Fever bring in Aerial Powers, or would they be better off looking for size and defense? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's hear your takes. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more updates. Until next time, stay locked in. Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel.